my channel. This week's video is the start of a new series that I'm calling Cook with G. But before I get started, please be sure to subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up so that way we can keep on growing. So Cook with G is a series where I head into the kitchen, follow some recipes, and I bring you along. My goal is to learn more about food and cooking by, well, doing it. I think one of the greatest ways to travel is through your kitchen. So I'm hoping that this can be a way for us to explore the world from home. So if you ever have a recipe that you want me to try out, just let me know in the comments below. Now today I'm using recipes from Lidia's A Pot, a Pan, and a Bowl. This is Lidia's newest cookbook, and if you don't know who Lidia is, she's a legend. She makes incredible Italian food, and about 2 weeks ago, I actually got to meet her. Here is a picture of me being as happy as a clam, and I have to show you. I also got it signed. So yes, Lidia was a wonderful woman, and I was so happy to meet her. So today, we are making 2 recipes from her cookbook. Let's cook. Okay, so recipe 1 is a winter panzanella. Okay, step 1 is to preheat the oven to 425 degrees. Okay, so it looks like we're supposed to heat the baking sheet up on the bottom rack. Also, if you're new here, any hissing or humming or random noises, it's New York City, but it also is the winter in New York City, so our water heater likes to make a lot of noise, in case you happen to hear that, so I apologize. But the next thing is, it says to toss the Brussels sprouts, squash, cauliflower in a large bowl and drizzle with the 3 tablespoons of olive oil, thyme, and salt and pepper. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, I have cauliflower, delicata, squash, and then under there are my Brussels sprouts. I picked purple cauliflower because frankly it seemed fun. So I'm gonna put all this into a bigger bowl. Okay, so you can see I just cut the delicata squash into little wedges, broke the cauliflower down, and I halved the Brussels sprouts and I cut off the ends, so I trimmed them. So now we're going to add our olive oil. It says 3 tablespoons, and then sprinkle with thyme and half a teaspoon of salt and several grinds of pepper. So the thyme, it says about 2 tablespoons. So I have my fresh thyme. So now it says 1/4 teaspoon of salt. There are my several grinds of black pepper. Now it is time to mix. Okay, so now she says to put them on the roasting sheet and roast until they're tender for about 35 to 40 minutes, tossing halfway through. So let's move these to the baking sheet. That sounds awesome. So it's sizzling because we preheated our pan. So I'm just gonna mix that all out so it's nice and spread out. So let's put this in the oven. Okay, it's been out halfway. So now I'm going to take them out. So I am gonna go ahead and mix everything. Now, back into the oven this goes. Okay, so this recipe also calls for walnuts, but Lidia specifically says to toast your walnuts. So she just says toasted. She doesn't really say if you should use any oil or anything. So I'm just gonna dry toast my walnuts in a pan. So the walnuts have started to get pretty fragrant and they changed color a little bit. So for me, that means they're toasted. I think that they're to my liking. So I'm gonna turn the heat off and I'm gonna go ahead and just put them to the side. This is what they look like, all toasted, and they are ready to be added to the final dish. Okay, it should be done. Oh, that looks awesome. Okay, we are going to move everything into this bowl very carefully. Let's hope I don't spill anything. Get all of our nice toasty roasted vegetables into our mixing bowl. Okay, we have everything all in here. Okay, so it says to put the warm vegetables in a bowl, check. Now we're going to add the bread and the walnuts, and we're going to drizzle it with more olive oil and vinegar. She says to use cider vinegar, so I used apple cider vinegar. I don't think that there is a difference, but I'm sure you could use any vinegar of your choice. So here are the walnuts that we toasted. Okay, so now we add 4 cups of bread cut into 1-inch cubes. Now Lydia does say that you are supposed to remove the crust from your bread. I did not do that. I think it's fine. I understand why. I think she just wants it to absorb all of the liquid, and the crust just won't do that. So I am going to mix this up, and now let's drizzle with our vinegar. I just used apple cider vinegar because she said to use cider vinegar, and that feels pretty accurate to me, but I'm sure you could use a different vinegar if you needed. And then she says to add the rest of the olive oils. Now everything just gets all mixed up. Okay, so she says that you should let the bread and the juices soak up for about 10 minutes in here. So I'm gonna let this sit, and I will catch up with you when it's time to put everything together. Okay, it's time for the final step, which is to add our kale, season, and serve. So she says to add 6 cups of loosely packed kale. So I'm gonna go ahead, put that in there, and now it does say baby kale, which is what this is here, which is also kind of nice to use because you don't have to worry about taking it off the stem, and you're able to eat the whole stem, and it's a little easier to digest as well. Okay, this is perfectly mixed, you can see here, so let's go try it. Okay, we're gonna try it, but as you can tell, the sun is going down, so cue the lights. Okay, it's a little brighter now, and my kitchen is sufficiently messy from making this wonderful recipe. So we've got our winter panzanella, and it smells amazing. I'm very excited to try it. Let's get a first bite. Definitely have to have some of this bread. I think that's such a cool idea to put bread in a salad. Okay, so we got bread. Let's get a Brussels sprout and some kale. I just took a bite of everything. I tried it all, and I'm impressed. It's really good. I think the one step I didn't do, which is the last step, was to season with more salt or black pepper if you think you need it, because I wanted to try it on camera for you. And I think I would add a little bit more salt, and honestly maybe a little bit of black pepper, but I don't think that it necessarily needs it. I think it has really good flavor. That being said, this is a very fun salad to me because it's warm, so it's perfect for the winter, and it utilizes a lot of vegetables that are in season right now. Specifically delicata squash, which if you didn't know anything about delicata squash, you actually can eat the skin. It is kind of annoying to cut, as most things are, unless you have a very sharp knife. My knives aren't perfect, so it was kind of difficult for me to cut. And you do have to scoop out the insides, but you don't have to take the skin off. So I think that that is a win when it comes to cooking with delicata squash. Overall, I think that I would make this recipe again. I mean, it's a no-brainer. It's really easy because you just have to chop a bunch of vegetables, season them like she says, toss them in the oven, and then the addition of the bread and the walnuts really kind of bring everything together, and they make it a very satisfying and satiating meal as well, because you still have a carb and a fat and a bunch of really nutrient-dense vegetables, which I appreciate. That being said, I think it might be time for our next recipe. So, let's cook. Okay, now we have our next recipe, which requires my Dutch oven. If you don't have a Dutch oven, a large pot will do. So this is a salmon, rice, and leek soup. And the first step is to heat our olive oil and our butter on a medium-high heat. So let's get this warmed up. So we are just heating this until the butter starts to melt and is all dissolved. And then once it's dissolved, we are going to add our leeks and our celery. So I have leeks and celery all washed and cut right here. So if you don't know anything about leeks, they are in the onion family. They are lovely flavor. I absolutely adore them in soups, which is one of the reasons why I picked this soup. But on top of that, they are so dirty. They were so filthy. So they're usually just like covered in dirt on the inside, so you really want to make sure you clean them well. My biggest suggestion to cleaning leeks is that you actually slice them first. So you kind of slice them dirty. You can rinse them before you slice them if you want, but then once you have them all sliced, you just put them in a colander like this one, and then that's when you'll run it under water and you can clean them a little better because they're broken up into smaller pieces. Oh, the butter is almost done. So I've never had salmon in a soup before. I mean, maybe in like, no, actually no, I don't think I've ever had it. I was thinking if I had in like a pho before, but I don't think so. Okay, it is all dissolved down, melted down. So let's go ahead and add it. Add our leeks and our celery. I'm just gonna mix this all together. And it says to season with about 1 teaspoon of salt. Okay, so that's 1 teaspoon of salt, and I'm gonna mix this around. It says you wanna cook until the leeks are softened but not browned. So I'm gonna go ahead and let that cook, and I'll catch up with you when it's wilted. Okay, so I'm back. We have our leeks softened, and it smells great because I love leeks, and I still love the smell of leeks. But now it says to add 3 quarts of water, which I spent about the last 5 minutes realizing I don't have a real way to measure that. But I did find a water bottle that is 1 quart. So I'm gonna pour this in 3 times, and that will be our 3 quarts. Looks like my Dutch oven is just big enough. So now Lydia says that you bring it to a rapid simmer, and we're gonna simmer it for 30 minutes until the soup base is reduced slightly. So let's just bring that up to a simmer, and then we'll set it for 30 minutes. And I will check in with you once it is reduced down. Okay, so the soup has been simmering for about 30 minutes, and it has slightly reduced. And then the next step says that it's time to add the rice, and we want to make sure it stays up to a simmer. So this is 1 cup of arborio rice, which is a short grain rice. It's commonly used for risotto, and Lydia says just to add it and stir occasionally. And so let's put this in. And she says that after about 5 minutes, we're able to add our frozen peas. So let me just turn the heat up so that way it comes back to simmer and the rice can get cooked. I've never used arborio rice in a soup before. I'm actually typically not a big fan of rice in soup. However, when I saw that this recipe used arborio rice, I was much more interested, because the reason I usually don't like rice is because I think that it tends to like break apart and that it gets like too, like this just absorbs too much liquid over time. But with arborio rice, that's like its bread and butter. It thrives off a lot of liquid. So and because it's a short grain, it won't like break down as much. So I thought that was an interesting choice, and I'm excited to see how the texture is once everything is brought together. Okay, it's been about 5 minutes, so it's time to add the peas. So this is just 1.5 cups of frozen peas, just kind of slightly thawed. She does put a note that if you want to use fresh peas, that you can just add it at the same time as the rice. But since mine were frozen, I'm just gonna go ahead and put them in now. And then it says to cook for about another 5 minutes before it's time to add the salmon. I'm very excited, partly because I'm super hungry. Although, let me tell you, I was snacking on that salad when I was snacking on the salad when the soup was kind of cooking and simmering away before, and it's so good. And I was remembering one of the reasons why I picked the recipe to begin with. To no one's surprise, it's because Lydia put a footnote that said that you can have a fried or poached egg on top of it as an addition for protein. And I was like, oh my god, this is perfect, because I was thinking it'd be good for meal prep. So I could have it as a meal, and a little more protein on top would be a great complete meal that is already prepped ahead of time. And I love eggs, if you didn't know. So I was pretty excited about that. But this soup will also be a nice meal prep for me because I am one person. So a lot of things end up in the freezer if I can't finish them. All right, it's been 5 minutes and honestly, the soup got so thick in just that time. I'm really excited. But one of the last steps is to add the salmon, and she says that we just cook until it's cooked through, and it should take between 5 to 7 minutes. You just have to make sure that the rice is done. So let's add the salmon, and then the next time I see you is when the soup should be just about done. I'm excited because I'm hungry. Okay, let's put our salmon in. So the recipe calls for 1 pound of salmon, and she says it should have no skin, no bones, and you should cut it up into about 1-inch pieces. I actually got 3/4 of a pound because it's just me eating it. So I figured I should get a little bit less so that way I'm actually able to finish it before the soup would go bad. So can someone let me know in the comments below if they've ever frozen salmon, like cooked salmon before? I think it'd be fine, but for some reason when I was at the store, I felt like it was safer to get a little bit less salmon. Stir this around. Okay, I think the rice is I think the soup is just about done, but to clarify, the rice is also done, and the salmon seems to be cooked through. Oh, it looks so good. But the last ingredient are 4 scallions all cut up. I just cut mine with my kitchen scissors, one of my favorite kitchen gadgets, accessories, whatever you have it. So we're just putting that in. Gonna stir through, and then she says just to season with a little bit of salt and black pepper. So I'm just gonna add a pinch of salt and a few cracks of black pepper. I'm gonna mix this up. Now I'm gonna serve some off, and I will see you to taste it. Okay, it's time to taste the soup. I'm very excited. The smell's delicious. This wasn't too hard as well. I think both recipes were pretty straightforward, and the only time that took a lot was cooking. So I feel like that's a win because for the most part, you could kind of set it and forget it. There was a little bit of prep involved, but I feel like it's a little foolproof, which I appreciate. So let me get a nice taste. A little salmon, some peas, and some celery. Okay. Dare I say I'm converted to the rice and soup game? Wow, that is really good. There's a lot of flavor in there for really not a lot of ingredients. I mean, the soup base was olive oil and butter, so like, how could you go wrong? 2 amazing fat profiles. But like, after that, it's just leeks and celery as like the main base. And it got really thick from the rice, but the rice is soft, but it's not, I don't know, like I don't mind it. I think because it's a short grain rice, it's a little bit better. And the salmon is awesome. I think because the salmon's with the rice, I don't think it's as like, it's more familiar to me in the soup, but it's delicious and flavorful. And it took no time to cook in a soup. So like, why are more people not putting salmon in soup? I'm curious to see if like when I reheat it with my leftovers, because obviously I have a giant Dutch oven of leftovers. I'm curious how well it stays cooked, or like if it's gonna cook more in like the reheating process. But even if it did, I don't know. I think it will be fine. And the peas are delicious. Everything is so warming and comforting. I think what impresses me the most is that there is a real broth. Like we started with water, but like we didn't put any animal products in the beginning of the broth. It was just the salmon at the end. But instead you get this really creamy, milky broth that came from all the vegetables and the starch from the rice. So I don't know. I'm very impressed. I definitely would make this again, especially if I'm craving salmon, but this is definitely a new great option for me. Now, that being said, that's it! Thank you so much for watching. I had so much fun making this video and I'm really excited to continue this series. If you have any recipes that you want me to check out, please be sure to let me know in the comments below. I would love to do more international recipes, or maybe I'll just keep cooking Italian recipes from some Italian cookbooks I have. But either way, I'm excited to cook more and share it with you, and we can go on this journey together. And hopefully we can learn a little bit more about food and the world in the process. So if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up so that way we can keep on growing. And that's it. Bye! I'm gonna go finish this soup.